All right, folks, welcome to NANOG 49 at our community meeting. We're going to get started. So we have only an hour, and we have a lot of stuff to talk about. One of the things I'd like to do, though, is since a lot of people here are interested in transition stuff, and that's going to probably take us a few days to finish talking about. We're going to do the other business first, get through it. I don't think there's anything really exciting or noteworthy in there, but we need to do it. It's part of our standard business. So I'll start off with the steering committee report. Dave will talk about the program committee, Mike about the communications committee, and Chris about the marketing working group. Then we'll hear from Andy, who will give us the merit update. After that, we'll start talking about the transition stuff and devote the rest of the session to that, as well as the track that we have scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. So with that, let's go ahead with the, reminder, this is a meeting for all of us. We want a dialogue rather than a lecture, so if you have questions, please step up to the mics, with the caveat that we're going to keep the transition discussion until the transition part of the program. Steering committee report. I am Steve Feldman. I am the chair of the steering committee. That means that I get to spend a lot of time herding other people around and getting things done. If you see people wearing blue badges like this, that means we're on the steering committee, and if you want to talk to us about things, please feel free to do so. We're here to listen to you. You elected us for a reason, we hope, and our job is to be responsive to what you, the community, want. There's also a few people who are non-voting members of the steering committee by virtue of the other committee chairmanships they hold. They're listed here as well. And these people are always in our meetings and always have a voice in what happens. Since the last time we met, the marketing working group has been busy working on additional sponsorship opportunities. I believe last I heard we had sold out everything except maybe one breakfast break for this, or one break for this meeting, which I think is a record. I don't think we've been that full in many, many years, if at all. We started work on the Pastel Network Operator Scholarship for this year. We believe the current deadline for applications is the 20th, which is a week from now. So after that, we'll start deciding who gets to come and see the fall meeting. It'll be somebody who can take what they learn from us and hopefully educate people back home, and somebody who otherwise wouldn't be able to make it. We have a new communications committee chair, Mike Smith. Welcome, and condolences. Although, to be honest, from what I've been hearing, things have been running pretty well, so maybe the condolences are no longer needed. But thank you very much for taking it up. We've been working on preparing for this and our future meetings. We have signed contracts and hosts now through the end of next year, so that's a good thing. We can plan out a good year and a half in advance, and we're going to start working on meetings beyond that very soon. And of course, we've been working on the transition stuff, which again we'll talk about later. After this meeting, we'll finalize the Pastel Scholarship, continue the great marketing working group momentum. They've been busy dreaming up new ways to collect sponsor dollars, which is always a good thing. If you have a chance, by the way, go see the demo room, vendor collaboration room, I think is the official term, that's set up over that way in the open seating area. A bunch of people have put together a lot of stuff to show you, and we think it would be really interesting. And we're going to start working on for 2012 meetings and the transition. There's a whole bunch of mailing lists that Communications Committee and Merit operate for us. NANOG, of course, is the main list that everyone knows and loves. There's NANOG Futures, which is where we talk about the meta discussions about NANOG, the organization, the future, transition, and what should change on the main list, things like that. NANOG Attendee is for people who are here to talk about great restaurants to go to in San Francisco. So I'd love to see more traffic on that list, by the way, because I need to know where to eat dinner tonight. NANOG Support are the people at Merit who do all the work behind the scenes to make this happen. You submit your slides to them, or at least you used to, is to excuse me, talk to them about hotel logistics and basically anything else that happens behind the scenes. Without them, we'd be sitting in an empty room without projectors or power or anything like that. Steering is us. NANOG PC is the program committee, admins is the communications committee, and marketing is the marketing working group. So all these names to memorize. Will be a test at the end. All right, next up is Dave Meyer, who will talk a bit about the program committee.
Thanks, Steve. Hey, it's great to see all you guys. It's great to be here in San Francisco, NANOG. These are all the PC members. We all kind of come together kind of once every 2 or 3 weeks to try to build the agenda. And the agenda you see is the result of hard work of a lot of people. And so if you see any of these guys around or any of these people around, mention it to them, thanks for doing the hard work, because they do. I don't normally make slides. I was just talking to Todd about, whether or not people like to or want to see the statistics of how many talks were submitted, received, accepted, rejected. I guess we don't call it rejected. We call it declined. It says declined in the tool. Declined. I find that incredibly boring. If you guys really want to see that, find a PC member or flag me down, and I can compute that. It's not a big deal. I just don't want to. I find it boring, and I don't want to waste your time with it. I will say one thing about NANOG 49 is we had being in San Francisco makes a difference, and we had a lot of really good talks, and we had a hard time constructing a agenda because we just didn't have enough time to get everything in that we wanted to get in. So we really hope that everyone enjoys it. But with that, please find a PC member if you want to know about things like what are the statistics. I'm not going to give that to you now. I think that the transition topics that Steve outlined are much more interesting to all of you. But if you want to hear that stuff, find me, find a PC committee member or any of that kind of stuff, and we'll compute that for you for next time. But with that, I'll give it back.
Thanks, Dave. Next up is the communications committee.
Hi, everyone. With apologies to Dave, I have 2 stats. So there were approximately 600 messages to the list since the last NANOG, and out of those, the Communications Committee moderated 6. So it's a very small number. We try to keep our hands out of the pie as much as possible. There are 3 people that had their posting privileges revoked. If you'd like to talk to us about any of the policies that are related to how we do those things, the best place I would think would be NANOG Futures, which is unmoderated, so you can say anything you want. We also have the lovely red target walking around, appropriately enough. And you can also email admins@nanog.org. Thanks.
I suppose this would be a good time, I should have done it after mine and Dave's, to ask if there's any questions about the stuff we've heard so far. If I don't see anybody at the mic, so I'm guessing that means that there aren't any, but I wanted to make sure to offer. Oh, we got one.
I have a question via AIM, and the question is there a jabber room or some other way for someone to raise questions via remote participation? And the answer is, heck if I know, so I figured I'd jump up to the mic and ask.
I will defer that to the communications committee.
We have a mailing list. No, we don't have a jabber room, but that's certainly something that we would love to do. We just haven't had a mandate to date.
Okay, so I'm going to go out on a limb here and say my AIM ID is KE4DJT, and I'm going to move closer to the mic, and everybody who's watching on the stream, I want you to all jump on me at once, and when I get back to my laptop, I want to see like 35 or 80 windows open with questions for me.
In the past, we've also used IRC for such things. So I don't know if anybody wanted to be a question wrangler on IRC. That I'm sure would work too. Okay, so the question was a meta question about questions. Okay, next up is the Marketing Working Group.
Thank you, Dave. So Dave kind of stole a little of our thunder here. We're very happy about this event, as most of our sponsors are pretty much full up, and we've got socials almost every night for you for the coming days. Social tonight, social Monday night, and social Tuesday night, along with the regular beer and gear. So we're definitely happy there. The Marketing Working Group, for those of you that don't know, basically goes out there and tries to solicit sponsors, whether they're in beer and gear, breaks, breakfasts, and also, basically gauge the level of participation for future NANOGs. We also came up with the vendor collaboration room, which I definitely ask that all of you go and attend and go through there and put your card in, because we'll have door prizes that will go off in the next couple of days to those who have attended. Enjoy the conference.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions? Okay. Next up is the merit report, which Andy will be presenting.
And first off, a big thank you to the meeting host, Netflix, especially in the person of Dave Temkin, for his yeoman duty in hosting the meeting and also in reaching out to find lots of sponsors and hosts for those socials the next couple nights. Netflix is also providing the IP bandwidth for the meeting. IP Networks provided the fiber to the hotel. Internet 2 contributed 10 access points that we're using throughout the meeting. And Aaron, as always, has provided funding to help support the broadcasts and the archive. You will enjoy the contributions of the sponsors throughout the meeting. You can read their names here. And you will also, of course, enjoy the contributions of the beer and gear sponsors tomorrow night. Enjoy the beer, but also enjoy the gear. Stop by and talk to their representatives. This is the best time to acknowledge the contributions of the Merit staff who put together the aspects of the meeting, and so I just want to acknowledge them by name. With us at this meeting are Larry Blunk, Dave Gilbertson, Sue Joyner, Dawn Kahn, Carol Wadsworth, Mike Zawacki, and we're joined by Pete Hofswell from Davenport University, Fawn Callan from Western Michigan, and Anton Capella from 5/9's Data. Yes, thanks. As of about 12:30 this morning, this room was the scene of a very beautiful wedding, so you can see the work that's gone into transforming it. I wanted to give a few stats, just some comparison with the Austin meeting, NANOG 48 in February. At that meeting, we had 452 total attendees, which was about the average for the previous couple of 3 meetings. Compared to here in San Francisco, as of last night, we had 561 attendees. As of right now, I think that's climbed to about 580. And if you look at the history of attendance that are available online, you have to go back about 6 years to find attendance of that level. And if we creep a little bit higher, you won't find attendance that high until you stretch back to the internet bubble, if you remember back that far. So we're hoping that NANOG becomes kind of a prime economic indicator nationally. Another interesting stat that we've noticed for a while is that about 1/3 of NANOG attendees are newcomers. So please do welcome the people who appear to be lost and fill them in on how things work, especially for you newcomers. Tomorrow morning at 8:30 there is a newcomers breakfast, which we hope you will attend to learn more about NANOG. Some financial stats from Austin is pretty close to a break even, as you can imagine, both revenue and expenses about $300,000. And future meeting sites, if you want to pull out the BlackBerry and put these in your calendar, NANOG 50 in October in Atlanta. This will be a back-to-back meeting with Aaron, hosted by Telex. NANOG 51, January and February of 2011 in Miami, which will be a fine place to be in January and February. Although I had to look this up, and the average high temperature in Miami in February is a mere 77 degrees. So I think oddly Miami will not be as pleasant a place to be as San Francisco has been in June. Then we'll see you again in Denver next June at a meeting hosted by Alcatel Lucent. A final update, there will be a brief outage of the NANOG website and email list sometime at a date to be announced during the summer as we relocate the servers. So you can look forward to that. We'll announce it when the date is known.
Okay, that's it. You can all leave now. No? Okay. All right. Now we're going to move to the transition part of the program, and I'd actually like to ask the other SC members to come on up and help me out on this, especially when we get to the question and answer part. I'm going to zoom through some slides. Hey, come on, SC members up here. I'm serious. I'm going to yeah. Either way. All right. Oops, that was not what I want to do. All right. Bear with me while they shuffle chairs and I shuffle slides. Oh, I remember why. It's a different deck. There we go. Okay, as soon as we're done playing musical chairs, we can. Yep. Okay, I think we got this under control. So I'm going to read through some slides. We can try to answer questions as we go through, or we can save them until the end, I guess, whichever works out best for you. Since we do have somewhat limited time this evening, we're not going to try to present everything, but instead what we're going to try to do is give an overview of what's going on, and then tomorrow during the track we'll be going into more details, a lot more details, and that's where we can start digging down into how things are really planned to work. So you may not get everything you want to know today, but we will see what we can do. All right, rules of engagement. Thanks to Sylvie, by the way, who put together these slides with help from a lot of other people. So I'm mostly just reading them. Other people did the hard work of creating them. So today during the community meeting, we have about 30 minutes to work with, maybe a little bit longer since we rushed through the other part. So we'll go through the presentation we have and talk about what we presented. Tomorrow there's more presentation with more details, and we can spend a lot of time talking about implementation plans and have community discussion and things like that. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what NANOG is now and why we think it needs to change. And then we're going to spend some time talking about what we want it to change into. And finally, we will talk about how we would like you to help us. So, today, NANOG's mission is to provide forums in the North American region for education and the sharing of knowledge for the Internet operations community. That's been the case pretty much since its inception. It's a fine goal, and one that we intend to continue. Bridges technical staff of research, operators, vendors, we have forums for sharing of knowledge, usual. And the way we do that right now is through holding conferences like this one and a big mailing list. The conferences are programmed by the program committee. Merit handles the logistics. Similarly with the mailing lists, the communications committee controls the content to the extent that they do, which is minimal, and Merit does the physical hosting of them. NANOG is an activity of Merit Network, Inc., a nonprofit corporation. It's 501(c)(3). This means it's an educational nonprofit. They have certain rules they need to live by, as any nonprofit does. Merit provides staff to do a lot of things for us: conference logistical coordination, registration services, financial management, hosting of the mailing list, support of and relationship with the SC and PC chairs, and the Merit staff serve as voting members, actually, that's incorrect, on many of the committees. The point in yellow at the bottom of the slide, which is visible, is a big important thing. Merit's primary responsibility is to their membership and their board of directors through that. That means that anything that, as a steering committee or program committee or whatever, we think we want to do, Merit has the ultimate authority based on their criteria. Their job is to be responsive to their membership. That's the way it is. That's the way it should be. But that does have some implications for how things work for us. The NANOG evolution process started moving towards self-governance in 2005 with the new charter, or the current charter we're operating under. We've had a lot of success since then. We have a program committee that is responsible for the conference content. We have a communications committee, formerly known as the mailing list committee, which manages the mailing list, performs its job of minimal moderation while trying to keep things on track. And we've created a marketing working group which is doing a wonderful job of getting more sponsorship opportunities for us. That means better breaks, more beer, more gear, and more funds flowing in. Still, again, and all that, NANOG is an activity of merit, and ultimately it's their money, their risk, their reward. So you might be asking why we want to change this. We have a working governance model. We've demonstrated that clearly, I think, over the last few years, but we have a limited ability to act. We've, as I've been saying for the last 3 slides, it's Merit's activity. They control the money. They control what happens. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the way it is, but we think we have an opportunity to do better and the ability. The other question people have been asking is why we're doing this now. Well, the answers that are kind of complex. We started talking about it in January during the meeting in Austin. And then we sat on it for a while and tried to figure out if we really still thought we should do this. We, by the way, is the steering committee and a bunch of people that we talked to in other committees and from the community. So it's not just 6 of us in a back room. It's more like 12 to 15 of us in a side room, I guess. But we've talked to a lot of people and got a lot of input. And as we move forward with this, we want more and more of that. We really don't want it to be driven solely by the steering committee. It really needs to be a community effort. Anyways, to continue with this, the question as to why now. We tried to time it so that it worked within Merit's budget cycle, which ends on June 30th. One thing that makes people really upset is if you go to them with new wonderful expansion or change plans right after they've done their budgets for the year. So we tried to do it beforehand. Other things that need to be taken into account is that Merit hotel contracts for NANOGs 50 and 51, as well as the one we're at now and the previous ones. So that's 2 of the 3 meetings in the next fiscal year that controls in large part the timing of when any transition can happen. So the green text at the bottom, we believe it's time for NANOG to become autonomous. As somebody put it, it's like a kid growing up and going out to the world on their own. I had a daughter who just graduated from high school the other day, so I already know what that's like in good sense. So we want to create an independent legal entity with independent funding sources, our own financial management as control, and most importantly at the bottom is membership owns the organization and controls what happens. That's the theme that you've heard earlier, but in this case it's our members whose goals are the mission that we gave at the beginning. Okay, here we go. Here's a brief flow chart of things that are going to change and how they're going to happen. Today, legal status, NANOG is an activity of Merit Network. We plan to move it to an activity of a new corporation called NANOG Inc., which will become a 501c3 nonprofit, which means that A, we don't have to pay income tax, and B, we can accept donations. The governance will move into a board of directors of this new corporation. Funding, right now it's activity-based, which means money comes in for conferences and goes out to pay for the conferences and a few other things. We want to improve, build upon the sponsorship model, and possibly move it beyond a per meeting type of thing. We think we can get revenue from memberships. We think we can get corporate sponsorships that are not necessarily tied to specific parts of meetings, like a break or a beer and gear. There's grant money out there. There are definitely ways to raise money, and there are a lot of really good ideas. And I think marketing folks will tell you that there have been people who have offered things like this in the past, and we want to provide a way for people who want to give us money to do so. So I'll just add, it's not in here, but what that means for us is that we have, with increased revenue from non-registration fees, that means that we get to keep registration fees at a reasonable level as perhaps the cost of hotels goes up and the cost of cookies goes up and things like that. Okay, financial reporting. Again, with us having an advisory role, what we see of the finances is the same reports that you see here every 3 months, 4 months. My understanding is that NANOG is not a separate bank account or pseudo bank account within Merit, but it's funded like any other project and budgeted in that way, and so on. By taking it into ourselves, that means that we will see everything and we'll be financially accountable to our membership, which we hope to be you guys. Staffing, right now, all the hard work here is done by the Merit staff. And I want to reiterate that I think Merit has done a really good job with all of this. What our plans are in no way reflection on the people who make all this stuff here in the meeting happen for us. Again, without you, we would be in a bare room with no AV and nothing, no cookies. So we intend as a new organization to have a limited paid staff, probably an executive director or something like that. Maybe if we need to, 1 or 2 other people to handle stuff, but to contract out most of it. Really don't need a full-time event staff to throw 3 meetings a year. So we don't think we need to do that. So there's potential for efficiencies there, we believe. Okay. All right. More slides. So the mission statement stays the same. We're not going to, we're going to keep organizing conferences and having a mailing list. The goal is still to provide forums for the education and sharing of knowledge in the North American region. Nothing new. We believe we'll have flexibility to do more than that. We can expand our education and outreach programs. We could find ways of expanding online forums, like maybe a Jabber room. We could explore, there's been some interesting stuff on the futures list recently of things like publications or certifications or things like that. These are things that moving more towards I don't want to say professional organization because that actually means something in IRS speak, but more of a group of professionals with a goal towards educating people that we can accomplish if we have the resources to devote to that. The governance. So we've created a nonprofit corporation, NANOG Inc. The name, by the way, is a name. It was intended, by the way, to emphasize the transitional nature of it. I don't think any of us expect in 3 or 4 years that we'll still be calling ourselves NANOG. We hope that we'll end up calling ourselves NANOG if we can work out the transfer of the intellectual property assets that are needed to do that. If not, it'll be something else. But whatever. We have a board of directors, which today is the 6 elected steering committee members. As we grow, we're going to mirror the existing other committees so that people doing work for Merit NANOG meeting will be the same people doing the work for a NUNOG-sponsored meeting, or NUNOG-hosted, whatever, meeting. We want to build a membership base by decoupling it from conference attendance. There's been discussion about that on NANOG Futures the last few days. One thing I want to emphasize is I don't think anybody has seriously brought up the concept of requiring a paid membership to be on the mailing list. So that's not going to happen. We don't intend to, we don't think it would be appropriate either to require membership to be here in these meetings. One thing that may happen is that if you become a member, you might get a little registration discount, which might set the cost of the membership, but those are things to be worked out. And funding. We want more funding from membership and sponsor organizations and other contributors, so that we're not relying solely on meeting registration revenues to fund everything. Oh, here's more about the membership. I should have read the slides before I started talking about them. Something I need to mention here also is that a lot of these are, it says proposal at the top, and that's because it's what they are. We on the board and advisors we've been talking to and people from the community have thrown out ideas, which are going to seed some discussions, but we're building some committees which will actually come up with real concrete proposals for what bylaws should look like, how membership should work, some other things which I'll get to in a little bit. Those committees are going to be chaired by people not on the board or the steering committee, and I very much hope that the majority of the people on these committees will not be us. We really want this organization to be what you guys want it to be, and to continue down that road. We think that model worked out quite well during the transition back in 2005, and we want to see it happen again. So, that said, our ideas for how things ought to work. There's a current NANOG voting membership population. All of you are eligible to vote in the NANOG election in October by virtue of having been here. Anybody else who's been to a meeting in the last 2 years, or since the beginning of 2009, I guess, will be eligible to vote in that election. We intend somehow to have the same set pool of people eligible to vote in the NUNOG Inc. election, which will be held at the same time as the NANOG election in the fall. That NUNOG Inc. election will be to ratify bylaws that we're going to come up with, possibly to seat the board members. We need to figure out how we're going to deal with that. And basically any other business that needs to be done as part of NUNOG as opposed to NANOG and Merit. So we have a bit of work ahead of us to figure out how we're going to deal with the joint election stuff and make sure things actually work smoothly. So that is the answer to the question of when we get to vote on this, and that's the answer. That said, that doesn't mean that we want you to not say anything now. If you have opinions or concerns or whatever, it's this is the time to bring them up during these next couple of days and beyond. Let's see, what else do we have here? Some other ideas that we've been talking about. One of the big ideas, big reasons for wanting a membership is that there are people who would like to be eligible to vote who aren't because they haven't attended a meeting. They participate in the mailing lists, they do other NANOG stuff, but they can't physically make it here. We want to enable them to vote. Being a member will probably involve paying some dues. We've thrown out all sorts of numbers on that. Who knows what it'll end up looking like. It won't be very high, but it'll be non-zero, probably. We started talking about the idea of discounted memberships for students who can't afford anything. My son eats ramen a lot. He's away at college. So I doubt if he could afford membership. Let's see. Members get voting rights in NUNOG elections, possibility of meeting discounts or subscription plans for members. That's the idea where you could like prepay in advance for end meetings and get a slight discount on that. And maybe other future benefits. I don't know, maybe a sticker you could stick on your business card or something. Let's see, conferences and lists. We've been discussing ways that we can change the way we fund the conferences, more money from sponsors and possibly from hosts. We think perhaps we can save some money on hotel costs. If we use professionals who do that sort of thing for a living. We want to outsource the dull stuff like registration management and on-site logistics, things like running the network and the wireless and all that. Again, there's no reason to hire paid staff to do it when you're only holding 2 or 3 meetings a year, and so we contracted that to people who are professionals. Mailing list, same thing, contract out the hosting of it, but keep community management, much as it is now. Contracted outsourced with performance obligations. That basically means that we're not going to set up the mailing list server in my garage and depend on my goodwill to keep it running. We want somebody whose job it is to do that, and if they want money to do it, we'll pay them. If they want to donate the resources, that's fine too. We'll happily take donations. But we want it done professionally. I mean, right now it's done professionally, and we don't want to change that. Here's a timeline. This is a question that a lot of people have been asking. We finally have some answers. So right now, you can see oh, it's orange and black now. It's changed color since I saw this last. So the orange bar is Merit operating the meetings. The black bar is NANOG operating the meetings. You can see the gap between NANOG 51, which is the meeting in Miami in January, February, and NANOG 52, which is the meeting in Denver in June, I believe it is, of next year. So, and then you see, okay. So right now, Merit's running the meetings. Merit will continue to run the meetings as they have been for those that they have hotel contracts for. That's obviously the right thing to do. They have the liability. They need to control their revenue stream and all that. There's a red line in October, which is when we're going to have the election to try to ratify all of this and make it really happen. Starting with NANOG 52 in Denver, the new organization will be running the meetings. We've been talking with Merit about the possibility of having them provide the meeting services much as they do now for that meeting as well to ease the transition. We expect that'll work out, and we'll go that route. NANOG 53 and beyond is when we start having the opportunity to explore new ways of doing things, possibly working with other vendors to do things, and we'll see how that goes. Merit is certainly, if they're interested, is a possible choice of vendor for that as well. It'll be their choice as to whether they're interested or not, but it'll be more of a competitive bidding type of thing. One other thing to point out, NANOG 52, the Denver meeting, we have NANOG itself has the hotel contract, which we signed 2 weeks ago for that. That meeting is going to happen. Alcatel-Lucent will be our host for that. NANOG 53, Aaron actually signed the contract for that meeting back a few months ago when we first started talking about all of this. We want to thank Aaron for going out on a limb doing that for us. We don't believe it's much of a limb because we think we know what we're doing here. But that said, Aaron did step up when we needed a quick decision and put themselves out on a limb for us. We appreciate that. And then beyond that comes 2012, which we will start planning for in the near future. So last slide in this part. Okay. Okay. Last slide in this part of it is how can you help? We know all of you out there want to help us do this and get it right. There are a bunch of working groups that we're setting up who are going to do a lot of the work so that we can just sit back and enjoy the rewards. No, it doesn't work that way. There's going to be a governance working group whose job it will be to figure out what the bylaws of the new organization should look like. Steve Gibbard, I believe, is chairing that. Dave Barrick and Betty Burke have volunteered to help out with it. There's going to be a membership working group whose responsibility will be to figure out what the membership really looks like, how much members will be paying, if there are going to be tiers of membership, how we'll deal with students, things like that. And then, of course, the other part of their job will be to go out and pester all of you to sign up to become members. Chris Foster is going to be leading that with help from Bill Woodcock and Ron Provo. We have the funding and sponsorship, the $ working group, with Chris Casada as chair. There's going to be a huge overlap between that and the current marketing working group, since a lot of the responsibilities are the same. And we need to make sure that as part of the process that the marketing sponsorship model does not break for the NANOGs 50 and 51. Things need to keep working the same as they have been. Let's see, what else we got? Finance budget working group. These people will be doing some oversight to make sure that our budgets actually are sane, and help us create budgets down the road. We will be tomorrow showing you a pro forma budget which has a bunch of numbers on it, which we believe are fairly realistic. Their job will be to take those numbers and refine them even further and dig down into more of the details. We're going to have a conference event planning working group. We don't have a chair for that yet. We expect that when we hire an executive director, he or she will be doing a lot of that work, but again, it should be a committee, not just an individual. These would be the people who figure out things like how hotels are going to work, maybe start working out where we're going to go in the future, how to deal with hosts. Then we'll have a technical transition services working group with Richard Steenbergen, whose name is misspelled, sorry. Rob Seastrom, Tom Scholl have volunteered to be on this group, who will be worrying about things like the networks and the wireless and things, video casts and everything else that happens in the wires that you see running along the floor in all these meetings. So those are some of the ways that you can help. If you want to help with these, please feel free to volunteer. Right now, the way to do that would be to talk to any of us, any of the people you see listed up there, talk to any of us who are on the steering committee or board or whatever hats we're wearing at the moment, or send an email to board@nanog.org, and we will happily take you up on whatever you can offer. And with that, I see Bill already at the mic, so we will go to the next section here, which is Q&A. But before I do that, actually, if Don is out there, there's Don. I'd like to give Don an opportunity to come up and say a few words, and Bill can stand there and wait.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. Just want to say a few words. Many of you saw my posting on NANOG Future, but essentially, the way this happened, we at Merit thought that that we were in a position where if we wanted to fight this transition, obviously if we thought this was the wrong thing, we would have, or if we thought this was the right thing, we would have done it before. We think we could run NANOG very well, but if we wanted to fight that, we would have to debate with the volunteers that make NANOG happen. And as you know, NANOG is a volunteer-driven organization. It is what makes NANOG a great organization. An open debate wouldn't serve the community at all. So we've decided to help with the transition. We don't want to debate with any of the current members of the community, and we're going to support this the best that we can. That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Don. We appreciate that. I think you used the word differences among friends when we were meeting the other day, and that's really what this is looking like. We obviously disagree on whether this is the right move, but we agree that moving forward in a professional and friendly manner is much better than fragmenting things. So, Patrick, you had some questions from IRC, which I'd like to get in.
Hello there. So the questions started with, will term limits of Merit NOG carry over to new NOG? And the SE has agreed to abide by the term limits. So for instance, Joe is term limited right now, and he will not be able to stand for re-election, although he has promised to help out anyway, which is really nice of him. The second question is, how does Merit feel about this? I don't think I should answer that. There are some letters on NANOG.org from Merit that you can read, or you can go over there and ask Don or some of the other Merit people. How about the IP space? Isn't it a reserved block? That is also covered in the letters that are on the NANOG.org website. Merit plans to keep the IP space. We're looking into getting a microallocation or something like that. And somebody asked why there were only 10 minutes allocated. We didn't actually allocate anything. So first of all, we just decided to take some time at the community meeting, which is now. There is a BOF tomorrow, which is going to be more fully encompassing and discussing all this stuff. 90 minutes. And also, when I was walking in, I noticed that the sign outside said that this meeting went to 7:15, even though the schedule says it goes to 6:45. So we can keep going, I guess, if you guys don't mind. Although I might start sticking needles in my eye if it goes on too long. And those are the questions from IRC. If you have any more, you can either put them on pound nanog on the whichever terahertz.net IRC, or you can go to the microphone.
Okay, Bill, your turn.
Thank you very much for sharing all this information, and I think I shared on the mailing list that this was one of the things that was discussed in even the very first steering committee meeting. The idea that a steering committee is only an advisory committee to Merit did have some limitations even way back then. So that may be the right avenue to go down. But I guess I'm getting some mixed signals, and I'm hoping you could clear up with a couple of these questions. The first is this a done deal?
I wouldn't say it's a done deal. I'd say we're well down the path. Certainly, if there is reason to do so, including possibly a huge outcry from you guys, I imagine it's still possible to change directions. Certainly, it would be possible to decide that the wrong set of people is in charge, and you can change, or in charge of the transition, that is, or NUDOG, and change those out. I certainly wouldn't want to stick around if people think I'm not doing a good job, and I think the others would feel the same way. I'd say up until the election in October that there's still opportunity. That said, we have started moving down a path. There are contractual things that would need to be resolved if we wanted to turn around and go back. I wouldn't say it's insurmountable, though.
I guess the other thing is I think we really do need to see some financials. There's enough overhead in what you're describing as the replacement for the status quo that one could see the costs getting very quickly pretty high. And yes, I know you might be able to save some money on some hotel stuff, and you can do some tweaks here and there to adjust the cost structures. But at this point, it sounds like you're saying it's more or less a done deal. But we really don't know what this new overarching structure is. So I encourage you to include the community and as much information as you can about the budget requirements for this new body.
We will be sharing the pro forma budget during the meeting tomorrow. The main reason why we didn't want to do it today is because we were told that we needed to be out of here 6 minutes from now. That actually turns out to not be the case, but that said, we haven't prepared in this slide deck the stuff that we would need to go over that. If you guys want to stick around for another hour, I suppose we could, but it also depends on whether the people up here can sit that long. Yeah, that's really all I have to say on that. We do have numbers. We do intend to share them with you. Yeah.
If Dan's going to answer, I think Bill's question, I'll let him go first.
Just to comment on Bill's question, in terms of the money that's being spent, there's, I think, a lot of politics going on here, and I think the steering committee members are being very cautious of how they interact with Merit, and I think the Merit guys are being very cautious, and it's good because, you know, through this transition, I think people have to be a little bit delicate in how they go about things. But in terms of the budget and in terms of the expenditures, you know, while we do not have a tremendous amount of intelligence on how Merit exactly spent every penny. Looking at it and comparing it in a pro forma way to other similar conferences and how much conference management services cost and how much the overhead should be. At this point in time, there isn't a lot of additional efficiencies Merit can squeeze out. If you compare it to maybe 2 or 3 years ago, there were some really big inefficiencies, but over the past 2 or 3 years, I think Betty in particular squeezed a lot of inefficiencies out. That being said, in terms of what it would cost us to actually run these conferences, I think that's where we could, in terms of the staffing and the overhead rather than the conference services, we could certainly save some money there. We're not going to get into a situation where it's like, oh my God, it's going to cost us much more to do this than it cost Merit. Merit did not have particular efficiencies in this way. In fact, by going to the approach Steve talked about and going for professional conference management services, we can probably squeeze out some additional efficiencies on the overhead side. The Merit simply couldn't because, they weren't doing 10 or 20 or 30 other conferences. So I think as we move forward, I know this is kind of a convoluted answer, but the chance that we're going to have to stop in 6 months and say, wow, Merit was doing this much cheaper than we are, that's extremely unlikely compared to what we know of our comparison between this and other conferences. We're not basing any forward-looking decisions on our ability to get additional funding beyond which Merit got.
So I noticed on the emails that were up on the website that you guys wanted $30,000 to transfer the name NANOG and the domain, and I'm wondering where that number comes from, why you think the NANOG name is worth $30,000, and if it might make more sense for us to come up with a different name rather than pay that, or where that number is coming from. Because just in theory, just looking at the domain, we kind of appraised the domain a little bit, and it kind of came out to about $340.
Is it on? So the way nonprofits get in the most trouble is conflicts of interest. So we went to the University of Michigan Office of Technology Transfer, and they said the domain and the trademark name are worth between $30,000 and $50,000. And so if we gave the name and the domain to the new NOG, somebody who attended a meeting at some point, somebody who was on the steering committee 5 years ago, could raise a stink and say, you gave it to them, you should have given it to me. So if we have a hard documentation and an exchange at market value for something of value, then both organizations are protected. Now, yeah, we put a price tag of $30,000, as we said with Steve and Sylvie. Well, we could say that you start paying that once your reserve gets to $100,000 or $200,000, or you could pay $1,000 a year or something like that. But the idea that there is an exchange of something of value that's documented protects us both.
Randy, you're next.
Randy Bush, IJ. I don't give a damn what it's called. Call it fracmerit.org for all I care. The gentleman who got the Nobel Prize for Economics said it would be good if banking became boring again. This should be boring. We shouldn't be interested in it. I will look at the financials, and I actually know how to read a balance sheet, but I have work to do first. And if I want to do it, you've got a nice little committee I can go to and ask stupid questions. Having this happen in the community meeting is fine, and I support it. Having it take BOF time during the week, no, I don't. I came here for technical content, and we shouldn't be going down rat holes of self-doubt and stupidity over what it isn't doing. This organization isn't even Business 101, it's Business .05. We put you up there, shut up and get it done. I'm not going to second guess you. I just want to know there's a plan, see the plan, and be able to find it. And can we get on with network operations, not Business .05?
Paul Vixie, Aaron, Board of Trustees. I heard Bill's question, you know, is this a done deal? And I want to say Aaron signed a hotel contract in order to facilitate this. We did not in that moment intend to take sides or say that this should be done or shouldn't be done, but it looked like it was happening and we were happy to help, etc. We are now carrying that contract as a liability on our books, and we're really counting on somebody to come fill seats in that hotel, otherwise we're going to be out the money. So just wanted to say I hope something happens.
And thank you, Paul and Aaron, for stepping in and doing that. We do appreciate it. That means there will be a meeting in October of next year. Joel.
Joel Yegley, former PC member for 4 years, I guess. But I mean, my observation would be, having watched the governance and voting process in NANOG, is you know, we only get one shot at this once a year, which is we vote at the fall meeting. So you know, we need the constructs, which are the rule changes, to be, you know, in front of us between now and then, so that we actually can vote on a new charter and move on. And the other observation I would make is, yeah, since we're booking hotels and things with long-term future liabilities, I mean, that's really what this is about in terms of the organizational construct that's created. And so we'll actually rather quickly arrive at the point of no return on this, because we will book a hotel for some time in, what, the end of 2011 or the beginning of 2012, and that will be, you know, on somebody's books.
Actually, the hotel has already been booked by its organization for June of next year, and so unless we're told not to, we tend to go ahead and hold a meeting there. If we needed to cancel, I imagine there were ways we could deal with that, but I certainly don't want to see that happen. Well, someone else must have questions.
Duncan Ng. The biggest question that, as I've been reading along the mailing list and, you know, discussions back and forth, it all breaks down to why. You know, you talk about your mission statement essentially staying the same, but there is no kind of statement of vision of what NANOG or NUNOG wants to be, you know, 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line. Like other people have made comments, you know, there are now starting to be liabilities that are being assessed by, you know, whether it's NUNOG, whether it's Aaron, whether it's Merit, that there doesn't seem to be a well thought out why and where we're going. And it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to start putting liabilities on the table for a bet that you don't quite understand what the payout's going to be. And you know, that's maybe my uneducated, steering committee point of view on this, but that's at least one set of questions that, as I've been seeing this go on over the last, 6-8 weeks, has constantly been in the back of my mind. Where is this going to be 2-3 years from now, when kind of it's supposedly firing on all cylinders?
Did one of you guys be trying
to? Sure. First, just to clarify the role that Todd and I have, we've been advisors to the steering committee through this process on kind of financial and event stuff. We weren't part of this decision, but we've tried to help them out after the decision was made. So to answer your questions about liabilities, these liabilities always existed. So someone was always assuming these liabilities. In the past, it was Merit. And because Merit was assuming these liabilities, it let them do stuff like decide when to schedule conferences, to decide how many conferences to do a year, to decide how long they are, to decide how they're scheduled, to pick one host over another host, to do a lot of things that the SC was sort of originally designed to start doing, and over the past 5-6 years has become capable of doing. But at the end of the day, Merit could say, well, listen, we've got this huge contract liability, so it's unfair for you guys to exert any kind of control over this. So, this is unfair. We've got to keep making these decisions. What's gone on more recently is that because someone else is assuming these liabilities, which is the new NANOG organization, and they're not, it's just a different guy with the same liability. Now the SC can start making these decisions for us, and we elect them, and they're responsible to us, and that's sort of how it works. In terms of why now, I don't think it's particularly. I don't think a meteor dropped and hit somebody on the head. I think people in here have been SC and PC and marketing committee and communication committee members for the past 5 or 6 years, and hosts can talk about this. Again, there's a lot of sensitivities going on, but NANOG has traditionally, or pardon me, Merit has traditionally been a little bit hard to deal with. And depending on how close you are to the situation, especially for some of the hosts, it's been very hard to deal with. People can tell you stories. Now, they've done a good job, but there have been a lot of minefields, and it's difficult. And at the end of the day, Merit is responsible to Merit. They're responsible to Merit's members. No one here is a Merit member. No one here has any say. They have a mission. We are not part of that mission. They have financial responsibilities. We are not part of those financial responsibilities. It took a long time to get the NANOG government's organization, in a good spot. It's there now. They're ready. Todd, what do you think?
Well, so I wanted to specifically address the question because I think it's a good question, and Dan sort of answered it of why now. The closer, so NANOG governance is now, I think, reached a point of democratic self-sustaining. We've had 2 or 3 complete swap outs of the entire leadership since the last major transition 5 years ago. And now, at some point you could have said, oh, it's about these people. These particular people are doing a very good job of leading NANOG. But now I think all of us have this level of comfort. Actually, it's about the sort of institution and set of processes we've built. And we're all becoming much more comfortable and trusting that, if we don't like these people, we're already talking about it. If we don't like what they're doing, we'll just vote them out and go put people in who will do what we want. And that level of maturity has been consistently bumping up against the friction, which is the reality that, it's not been talked about enormously in public, but NANOG has been purely an activity of Merit, and Merit's responsibility is to deal with that enormous fiscal responsibility of the hotel contracts. To their credit, we pushed them hard to plan more NANOGs further into the future so that we could all plan our meeting attendance, and we could get better hosts, and we could get the cities we wanted, and conferences we wanted, and dates we wanted. But then on their books, they see that future liability going up, and their level of nervousness goes up, and their level of comfort goes down. So I think at this point what happens is there has been a natural divergence of time of the perspective of how NANOG does and should work. The steering committee, as they become more responsible, as they become more in control in their perception of what's going on at NANOG, get more and more frustrated by the fact that the legal and fiscal reality is that NANOG is controlled by Merit. So, and again, it's not something specific wrong that anyone did. It's just been a long-term maturity of NANOG. That's my perception, at least.
I'll just add to that with my perception, and this is just me, that I would much rather be doing this now when things are relatively calm and at peace than trying to do it during a time of turmoil when there are many other things going wrong that we need to worry about. If we had tried to do this during the transition back in 2005, was it? I think it would have been much harder. Sure.
You guys have, in the answers, have talked a lot about what's happened in the past in terms of the management of NANOG and the meetings themselves. I'm trying to understand what are the changes that you guys are looking to do in the new NOG that kind of, that make all this work worth it. What's the payoff besides, the freedom to do exactly what we want, how we want to do it?
I think that is payoff in of itself. It does give us down the road flexibility to experiment with new sponsorship models. Some people have proposed changing the number of meetings in a year. It gives us the opportunity to expand it to areas that we're not currently in, like the document tracks or that sort of thing. I believe that's flexibility. Short term, the goal is to not break things, and I don't want to be flippant about that. That is a very important thing. If we create the opportunity to build all this new stuff while destroying what's here now, we're not doing our jobs. So we need to focus a lot on not breaking things. That's a big piece of what needs to be done, and that's probably what we're going to be focusing most of our energy on for the next year or so. Randy.
So Vijay Gill. So I agree with Randy that basically we trust you guys. We are your elected members. Please go ahead and execute as you see fit. And if you don't like it, we'll vote you out. And we shouldn't debate this much and take up more operational time debating this. What I would like, I think, would make life much easier for me and for, I'm assuming, for other people is whenever I go up and say I need a couple of $100 million because I want to do this or that, they say, hey, what are your base structural assumptions that you are asking for that say that this is actually worth spending? And then what they ask for is perturb the base assumptions. So a sensitivity analysis, like what if the attendance goes to 300? How long can NANOG continue to operate? What if the attendance, it works really well, the attendance goes to 2,000? What are the future plans for the kind of money that comes in at that time? If you do that kind of sensitivity analysis and post it, I think we are pretty much good to go, and I think we should stop discussing this anymore.
Many people want to toss anything in.
That's actually in the model.
Is it? Okay. Okay.
Randy Bush, IIJ. I was on the first steering committee. This has been happening for a long time. The question I would ask is why it wasn't done sooner. To give you an idea of, I think Daniel said it, the real basis is Merit has their goals. They are good goals. Admirable. Merit does a good job for the state of Michigan educational world, et cetera, et cetera. Those aren't the goals of the NANOG community. They have come in conflict. Okay? I would, when I went to Boiling Point was when a NANOG meeting was scheduled in direct conflict with an RIR and other regional NOG meeting that half the steering committee had to go to. And it was scheduled that way to avoid a Merit internal meeting or external meeting with their memberships. And I can understand why Merit did that, but there was no ability to discuss and negotiate. Okay. But to take the second half of you, and that's no blame on Merit and no blame on NANOG, that's what happens when, the goals are different. The second part of your question, I think, is worthwhile, though. What will change? I think, of course, the people up there are very worried about breaking things. But there are things that really should be changing and we can work on. And one of them kind of pokes to Vijay's question about, sensitivity analysis of finances. We've continually scheduled meetings based on finding some random host, and we end up in wonderful cities like Albuquerque, and not very many people come. And we hold them in San Francisco, and wow, we're just surprised we have so many attendees. Wow. I mean, it's like I went to a V6 meeting last week, and I found out we're running out of IPv4 space. It's an absolute shocker. So there are ways we can change things when our goals are, and that's just one example. And I don't want to bring up a bunch because all it does is bring up bad blood about the way things have been run and decisions. But I think there's significant ways that we can evolve and change on how we actually run the organization. And just to be clear, I said it on the list, but I should say it here. I think membership plus attendance model is, I can't name the number of organizations that do it that way.
Thanks. To go back to what Vijay said earlier, by the way, Sylvie and other people, I forget whom, sorry, have actually put together a budget that we will be presenting tomorrow, which allows you to perturb the bases and look at what happens if something goes wrong, if the membership goes down, et cetera, et cetera. So that information is there. This was mostly to give you guys a preview. The BOF tomorrow will have much more in-depth, detailed information.
By the way, in terms of future things that people have suggested, and I'm not saying I like any of these because some of them I like and some of them I don't like, but things that have been suggested like on the NANOG futures list and sort of in the halls, and I think people should brainstorm this and try to think of more things. One was BCPs. Another was doing more professional development stuff. Another was more of sort of a common core network engineering education. I think there's probably 5 or 10 more things that people would think of. I think these guys are concerned with not breaking anything during the transition, but I think a lot of people out here should be thinking about, in a year or two, when this transition is fully done and nothing is broken, and, what people would like to see, and if people would like to see it, maybe they should start working on it. I certainly think that we shouldn't wait for the steering committee, but if someone wants to start a BCP working group, or if someone wants to start, a network engineer core education working group, or whatever, people should just stand up and say they're going to start working on it and recruit people and start working on it, because I think once we've got our own organization, all of that stuff becomes a possibility.
Interestingly, apparently my microphone doesn't like me. Interestingly, I got a text message with a new comment. You people are impressive. I don't even know who did it because apparently that number is not in my address book, so you might want to tell me who you are. But it is a reminder that, and Steve said this earlier, but a reminder that for people who just come to the meeting and are on the mailing list, if they're not involved in NANOG Futures, if they don't come to the community meeting, if they just show up and go to the plenary, they shouldn't notice anything happen. This is going to be a no-op, or at least that's the plan. You're just going to show up next year, it's still going to be NANOG, and it's going to look just like it was before, like I said, or at least that's the plan. If you'd like that to be different, then you should go join one of the working groups and see what you can do to change things.
Thanks. Leo Bicknell, ISC. I think this is largely a natural progression. And I think part of the answer to why now is you have to have people in place who want to make it happen. And so if we have that now, that makes it the right time. I do think my concern is kind of similar to what Vijay articulated. While I don't follow this in great detail, I've heard stories of meetings gone by where various things have gone wrong and ended up costing lots and lots of money. And, on balance over 10 years, I don't think NANOG loses money, but certainly on any individual meeting, it could possibly go in the red quite badly. And so my worry in setting up a new organization is it dies a young embryonic death because, we pick a meeting location and 6 months later there's an earthquake in San Francisco Falls in the Bay, or BP spills oil, or whatever happens outside of our control. And I haven't seen yet a lot of planning or reassurances for sort of, the really bad things that can happen, and I understand some more is coming out tomorrow in the BOF. But to be truly supportive of it, that's the piece that I feel I need more information on.
For events that are truly outside our control, there are things like conference cancellation insurance, which usually run fairly cheap. It's like $1 on $100 per outlay.
Sure.
Those are folded into the budget.
Absolutely, and I think I'm more concerned about, I know instances before where NANOG has ended up costing, 50 grand more than anybody budgeted because whatever XYZ, cost money and stuff. But, when you don't have a reserve, one of the nice things Merit brings right now is they have a reserve. And we keep talking about, as we plan further out, the liability gets bigger, right? We've got 3 hotels outbooked instead of 1 or whatever. So it's, like I said, it's just a concern where I want to see a little more to really on board with the whole concept.
2 things. Thank you for volunteering for the Finance Committee meeting. And the second one is, hi, VJ. I know you were a business major.
I wasn't a business major.
So you have 2 volunteers right here.
Well, thank you very much.
What did you volunteer for, Randy?
Yes. I will say math is hard. There's a Macy's over there, so I'll see you guys.
Okay, Karas.
I am relaying sentiments from Dinesh Babuda. He'd like to say, as an outsider, his viewpoint is that independence is the payoff, and that we oughtn't be looking back, that we ought to be looking forward. NANOG has come a long way since it started, and in his opinion, the best thing to do for it is to look forward and work on structure that is sustainable.
Thanks, Dinesh.
Oh, Todd was leaving, not walking to a mic. Okay. Yeah, that was good.
How did RS get out of being up here? He's on the steering committee.
That's true. All right, you get to give the presentation tomorrow.
Okay, I'll do that. I was late.
Okay. I don't see anybody else queued at the mics. Anything more on IRC?
No.
Okay. In that case, I want to thank you for coming. I want to close with a couple of thoughts of my own. My goal my role here mostly is just herding cats, trying to get people to do the things that need doing to make sure it happens. And I want to thank the rest of the group, the steering committee, the volunteers, and the transition team, and anybody who's offered advice to us, either positive or negative, over the last few months. We need that. Please keep it up. We can't do it without you. Finally, my goal, personal goal out of all of this, is to build an organization that is sustainable and can evolve into what you guys want it to be over the years. In the short term, what we've done is built a nonprofit, built a set of initial bylaws that can be modified to be what the bylaws, the governance committee feels they should be in October. That's an example of that. Going down the road, we want to build something that, like I said, doesn't break NANOG the way we do our conferences and our mailing lists, and gives us a platform to innovate from there. I think we've started on that path. I think we have a good chance of success, and I want to thank everyone for being out there and supporting us. If that's what you do. Thanks.
I want to remind everyone of the social we have today at 8 o'clock. It's just right across the street. Let's all attend and have a drink. Oh, it's right in your little agenda guide, and it's at Harry Denton's Starlight Room.